we are doing this. I have been dreading to record this video for weeks. It's probably one of the hardest video to make. But here we are. We are talking about burnout. International team meeting in 10 minutes. I remember looking at that notification on my phone. I was sitting in the armchair where I had been all that morning. And normally, however tired I was, I would find some way to pull myself together. But that morning, I looked at that message and I just couldn't. And that really frightened me. Without any warning, I had woken up that morning just having this overwhelming sense of physical and emotional fatigue. My body just felt flat and drained, as if I just had run a marathon. And dragging myself out of bed was the only thing I managed that morning. And after that, I just quickly lost any energy to do anything at all. So I sat there in the armchair. The morning went past, and then the afternoon. And I did not move an inch from that spot until the sun went down. I didn't have any energy to prepare a meal even though I was hungry. And my mind felt as empty and flat as the rest of my body. And nothing in life seemed interesting enough to motivate me. Nothing particular had happened the night before, the week before. And that was what I couldn't understand. I had always been able to push through before. So why this time I couldn't? It went on for days. Some days were slightly better, but most of the time I just couldn't do much at all. But I told myself that I needed to press on because I felt that the rest of my life couldn't stop. There were project deadlines at work, a business trip in the calendar, a part-time master degree with essays to be written, and friendships needing my attention. However exhausted I felt, there was always something that seemed more urgent than how I was feeling. And the harder I tried to carry on as usual, the more obvious it became that something had changed. My sleep got really bad. I couldn't sleep through the night. I would wake up at least a few times in the early morning. I really struggled to think clearly too, as if there's like a permanent brain fog surrounding me. I had always been proud of myself in thinking and analyzing things clearly enough. But yeah, now I just couldn't even push through this fog. My memory was gone too. There was a work meeting I attended and I was saying something, and then only a few minutes later, I could not remember what I had just said. And I had to apologize to the people in the meeting and ask them to remind me of what I said. I spent so much time at home physically exhausted, even though I was doing very little. I just did not feel like myself anymore. It felt like the old me had just disappeared and left me. And that was what frightened me the most. I had spent years relying on one thing whenever life became difficult. I pushed through. And now, suddenly, that had just stopped working. After weeks of this, I had to face the new reality that I just would not be able to complete my commitments at work, in my studies, or in my personal life. It was humbling to admit defeat and to tell people that I was not able to deliver what I had promised to do for them. I remember telling people at work that, and also the staff in the college where I study, I just felt so useless, like a failure, because I had to be honest about my own limitations. And the worst part was that I didn't even know if I would ever get back to normal again. I couldn't give the story a positive spin, like promising them that I would be up and running in a certain number of days. I remember thinking carefully about how I was going to explain myself. I wanted people to understand that there was a legitimate reason why I could not cope. Somehow simply saying, I can't do this right now, did not feel like good enough. Then came the response from people. Managers at work were really understanding, and they listened to my struggles with so much care and grace. The college where I studied was helpful and reassured me that a pause would not be detrimental to my degree. And there were friends who did not ask me to explain myself either. They did not need me to turn up as the energetic version of myself. They were just simply there for me. I am very grateful that what I dreaded did not happen. No one was disappointed by me. No one's life fell apart because I could not go on as usual. I had been bracing myself for disappointment from others or even judgment. Instead, what I kept hearing in one way or another was, it's okay. Take the time you need. And that left me thinking, if nobody minded, then what had I spent all those weeks so afraid of? You cannot force your way out of burnout. The same pushing that got you this far might be part of what brought you here. I wish I had understood that, because for months I was still trying to just push through. I kept thinking that if I could just find a little bit more discipline and force myself out of this rut like I used to, I would come out the other side. And eventually, something dawned on me. All those years of forcing myself had contributed to this burnout. I had been pushing my nervous system for years, and eventually I had reached a point where I just simply could not keep doing it anymore. And I raised another question. Why had I spent so many years forcing myself in the first place? And that took me back to the fear I had felt about telling people I could no longer cope. I began to realize all my life, I had believed in order to fit into this world and into my social circle, I had to be a certain way. I had the image of what a successful Katie should look like, and I can see now it was a very demanding standard. I should be capable, I should be productive, I should keep my commitments, I should maintain friendships, I should cope. Even on days when I was exhausted, canceling something could make me feel worse than actually dragging myself through it. Resting while something remained unfinished did not really feel like rest. Somewhere in my head, there was always a voice telling me that I should be doing instead. That standard was something I had to keep up with, otherwise I would perceive my life as falling to pieces. The harsh reality was that I could not accept myself for who I was without meeting that standard. So keeping it up was never really a choice, it was simply how I lived. You see, I never counted keeping up with life as extraordinary effort because I thought that was simply the only way of existing for me as a person. I realized that I had been pressuring my body to fit this false image of myself without even noticing the discomfort I was putting my nervous system through. It was like my head had been a really unkind boss in the way it spoke to the rest of my body. Tired? Keep going. Overwhelmed? Keep going. Need some space? Well, you can have it after everything's finished. Except everything was never finished. There was always another deadline, another essay, another message to reply to, another person I did not want to disappoint. And deep down, I could not face this truer version of Katie, the one who cannot always be useful to others, the one who cannot always produce output, the one who sometimes has to say, I can't. There's a name for what happened to me, and I didn't know back then. It's called Autistic Burnout. When I started reading the experience of autistic adults describing it, I kept recognizing myself in their stories, the exhaustion that sleep didn't seem to touch, the things I used to be able to do then suddenly felt impossible. Noise, people, ordinary demands becoming harder to tolerate. Years of trying to meet expectations that your nervous system is struggling to sustain. Suddenly, so much of what had happened to me began to make sense. But having a name for what had happened did not immediately give me my life back. With both work and college giving me time off, the things I had organized my life around suddenly became much quieter. For a while, I felt aimless. For so long, I had measured myself by what I could offer to other people, and now I could no longer offer very much at all. I remember having days with almost nothing in the diary, and that should have felt like freedom. Instead, I sometimes found it deeply uncomfortable. There was no work to prove myself through, no college work to complete, no busy day at the end of which I could tell myself I had done enough. And without all of that noise, I was left with myself. Who am I? Without these external expectations. I did not know whether you have ever noticed what your own standard is, the one you cannot fall below without feeling that you have failed. I had lived by mine for so long that I did not even know it was there. I just thought it was who I was. And without it, I had no idea whom I was going to be. You cannot force your way out of burnout. The same pushing that got you this far might be part of what brought you here. It took me a while to learn what that meant in my day-to-day life. Instead of constantly asking myself how I could get myself to keep going, I learned to tune in to my body and check in with myself. How am I feeling today? Do I feel safe? Do I feel tired? What would meet my needs right now? Sometimes it could be a nap, or maybe a walk in the nature. Sometimes it could be a nourishing, wholesome meal. Or sometimes it could be a chat with a friend who doesn't demand anything from me, who just enjoys my company. At first, even this felt strange. I was so used to making decisions according to what needed to be done. So asking what I needed almost felt like I was asking the wrong question. But I kept asking, and gradually, I started to notice improvement. My brain fog, my memory, my sleep began to get better as I took better care of my physical needs, like food and exercise. There were still bad days, but I began to notice that responding to my body was getting me further than fighting it ever had. And slowly, something else began to change. I started to question the standard that I had spent years to maintain. For so long, I had measured myself by my work achievements, by maintaining my social networks, and by what I could offer to other people. I began to reflect on why my own acceptance of myself had always been so conditional. I used to think my body failed me that morning in that armchair, but now I realize my body had simply reached a point where it could no longer keep paying the price for the way I had been living. And that changed the way how I see myself for the better. So if you are in burnout right now, my heart goes out to you. It's a very challenging experience. You might be wondering the same questions I did. When will this end? When will I ever get back to normal again? I can't offer you any answer, but getting back to normal is not even the question I will ask now, because some of what I called normal was the very way of living that had become impossible for me to sustain. So when things that used to work have just stopped working, and you do not know who you are without them, it doesn't mean there's nothing left of you. It might just mean that you have never had the freedom to ask and to invite the real you to come forward. Maybe you have not been failing to push through. Maybe pushing through was never the way out. For me, the question slowly became something different. If I had stopped building my life around forcing myself to function like everybody else, what would I build in its place? So this is what I want to talk about in my next video. I want to share the life habits I have built since my burnout, the ordinary daily practices that have helped me live with the way my neurodivergent brain actually works. Until then, be gentle with yourself. I am really glad that you are here.